Leah Rachelle Peebles was a 23-year-old from Albuquerque, New Mexico. She was originally from Fort Worth, Texas, and liked to write in her journal. On May 22, 2006, she wrecked her car and it had to be towed. The next day, Leah showed up at the garage with a man and a woman to check the car's status. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Densel, and this is Unfound. Some of you may know through both public and private conversations that I have a morbid fascination with plane crashes, especially commercial jets. And it's been that way for a long time. You ask me about a crash, and I can give you many of the particulars: location, how many survivors, cause of the crash, type of jet. I'm a virtual encyclopedia when jet accidents are the topic. What you learn is there is a particular kind of crash that was years in the making. Usually this entails a repair that wasn't performed correctly or a flaw in the design of the jet itself. And through both time and use, the accident day gets closer and closer without anyone knowing. And when the crash does happen and people are killed, investigators usually find the cause, going back sometimes decades to find the moment that decided the fate of both the jet and its passengers years later. Some of these accidents: United Airlines Flight 232, Japan Airlines Flight 123, China Airlines Flight 611. You can look those up to see what I mean. I bring this up because in the disappearance of Leah Peebles, yes, she vanished in 2006 in New Mexico. But had something not happened to her in a totally different state almost 10 years before, it is very possible she would have never gone missing. Instead, it did happen, and possibly became for Leah and her family the pivotal moment. And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Good's site, charlieproject.org. Leah Peebles grew up in a Christian family in Fort Worth, Texas. She was a popular girl and involved herself in many activities. However, things changed after a friend raped her when she was 14. A downward spiral started, and it brought her to start doing drugs and abusing alcohol. Leah went through various rehab institutions and programs with limited success. Yet when friends of her family moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, the Peebles thought a change might do Leah good. She could start all over in another city with people who would look after her, and she could get away from the bad elements in her life in Fort Worth. So on May 5th, 2006, she moved to Albuquerque. It wasn't long before she got a job that should start on May 25th. In addition, Leah started writing in her journal again. The posts were positive, with her talking mainly about keeping sober and finding faith in God again. But on May 22nd, she wrecked her car. To this day, the details of this crash are still unknown. What is on the record is that the car was undrivable and had to be towed. Leah never explained to the tow truck driver exactly what happened, but it looked like she had run over something. Early the next day, Leah showed up with a man and a woman at the garage where her car was taken. These two people have never been identified. The mechanic went over the extensive damage to the vehicle with Leah. After that, she and the others left. Leah was never seen again. Upon learning of Leah's disappearance, her father made at least 11 visits to Albuquerque, Las Vegas, and elsewhere in an effort to find out what happened to his daughter. Despite talking to many people, he never came to a solid conclusion before his accidental death in 2013. The following issues have complicated the investigation into Leah's disappearance. Number 1. The identities of the man and woman with Leah on the day she disappeared have never been determined. Number 2. The recipient of the last call from Leah's phone has also never been identified. And number 3, exactly how people with criminal records surrounded Leah within only weeks of her moving to New Mexico. The Peebles family is open to all possibilities regarding Leah's disappearance. The interview for this episode is with Leah's mother, Sharon Peebles. Unfound news. Thank you for all the birthday wishes. I don't consider myself to be a very cool guy or anything like that, but my birth date, August 1st, there's just something about it that sounds cool. I'm 48 now, by the way. Hard to believe. And once again, thank you for all of the birthday wishes. Next, as I posted a few weeks ago, I had a conversation with the FBI office in Los Angeles. This was due to me working on a case that has become an ongoing project for me that I can't talk about right now. However, the beginning of this week I spoke to the FBI office in Newark, New Jersey, and I just want to say, the people I've spoken to at the FBI in both offices have been some of the nicest I've encountered since starting Unfound. And I'm not saying that just to kiss their butts. They've been genuinely helpful and concerned about my interest in a certain case. I cannot thank them enough. Finally, I hope all of you checked out the TribLive.com article regarding the disappearance of Marianne Verdecchia in 1962 in Pittsburgh. I also hope you enjoyed hearing about Therese Rocco, who's become a Pittsburgh police icon. I think that article is the best the Trib has done. If you haven't read it yet, please go to TribLive.com, where you can find Unfound. Unfound is on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, Podomatic, Stitcher, Podbean, and Spotify. Concerning Facebook, please join us on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern for the Unfound live show on the Unfound page. I also need to give a shout out to all of the new followers on the Podomatic app. You can email the program unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. The website unfoundpodcast.com. Please check out the Secret Stephen Kocher episode. The website at Trib Total Media, triblive.com/news/unfound. Unfound has Patreon and PayPal accounts. Your contributions provide for many of the items gifts have received so far. I hope you will consider supporting the program. Unfound merchandise, volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4 on Amazon, in both paperback and ebook form. Let's work on getting some great reviews for all of the books. The playing cards at makeplayingcards.com, and shirts for almost all of Unfound's cases at unfound-podcast.myshopify.com. That includes the flagship t-shirt, The First Year Cases, that has a collage of everyone from Suzanne Lau to Jennifer Wilkerson on it. And soon you will find a shirt for Season 2. And please mention Unfound on all true crime Facebook pages and other websites and forums. Thank you. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the mother of Leah Peebles, Sharon Peebles. Sharon, welcome to Unfound.
Yes, thank you very much for having me on.
You're welcome. Let's start here. Leah is your daughter. Do you have any other sons or daughters? And what was the Peebles house like, of course, focusing on Leah?
Right. I have two other sons that were younger than Leah, and they were all three of them very outgoing children. A lot of people might call it strong-willed. But they all got along well together. We were just a loving family, middle-class family with Christian values. So they were brought up learning about God, and we were trying to do a good job of teaching them. I felt like so.
Sure. We know that Leah, of course, disappeared in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But where do you live? Where did your family live? Where did Leah grow up?
I live in Fort Worth, and Leah grew up in Fort Worth. She was born in Dallas, but we spend most of our time here in Fort Worth.
And so you have a total of 3 children then?
Yes.
Okay. And how did Leah get along with her 2 brothers? Was it pretty good? They were close in age?
Yes. The middle child actually was closer to her. They were about 3 years apart, and my younger son was 5 years apart from the middle child. So, but they were kind of spaced apart every 3 to 4 years. So, but they got along great. I mean, they fought like a lot of kids do, but and sometimes the brothers would, get together and team up against the daughter, so against their sister. So,
okay. Well, it's a good thing that she was older then, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
What was Leah into as a girl, into being, maybe a teenager? What were her interests?
Right. She loved loved cheerleading. She loved drama. A lot of times she was artsy. She liked jewelry making and loved hanging out with her friends and listening to music. She liked alternative music really well.
Mm-hmm.
And she liked social media, as most teenagers do. So,
Mm-hmm.
and she was a pretty good student up until her last couple of years. And it kind of slacked off due to the drug use. So,
Okay, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Okay. Was she into any sports or play any instruments and
no, just the drama.
just the drama? Okay, I was
Yeah.
into drama too. I loved it.
Yeah.
It's a good way. It's great. It's good to learn with working with other people on stage. Gaining
Yeah.
self-confidence. It's very good if you're going to do any public speaking in a job. It's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
good. It's more than just about a performance. Sure.
Yeah.
Would you say that Leah was more like you or more like her father?
Well, she was adventurous like her dad and outgoing, but yet she was kind of creative and artsy like me. So I would say a good balance of both of us.
Now you'd already mentioned it, and we're not going to. We know here on Unfound we make no value judgments, but we have to talk about this because this could be an element that might have led to her disappearance. We just don't know. But
Sure.
when did you, maybe as her mother, first start noticing that, maybe she was getting into some problems, some things that I'm sure you couldn't have predicted?
Yeah. I would say probably her sophomore year. She started smoking pot and hanging around different people. She actually was wanting to get out of cheerleading after her sophomore year, which she did. But just started hanging around the wrong kids, and I guess from the pot smoking, it developed into the use of heavier drugs.
As you look back at that now, what do you think was going on there? Like you said, not that it sounds to me like you had a close family, a loving family. What if you had any message for other parents out there, can you put a finger on why you think that happened?
Well, when she was in the beginning stage of ninth grade, she was raped by a classmate that was older, and I think she we talked to the DA's office, and they suggested that we not press charges. When we found out she was raped, all the evidence of the rape had been washed away, but I did take her to the doctor, and there was trauma. It showed that she had been raped, just no evidence of who did it. So we went to the DA, and they suggested not taking her to court. But what we did do was go through mediation, and the young man did admit to it. We just can't say who he is or any details of it. But we did try to work through that. But I think she was kind of resentful in a way of us not following through with the court.
Okay. Was this some type of like date rape situation, or was this somebody guy that she trusted, or?
Yeah, it was actually a guy that had been over at our house a few times, and he had come back. He had actually been to our house a few days before, and he had come back, and Leah let him in one evening. She just thought that he was wanting to talk. And we were already in bed, and he raped her.
While you were there in the same house?
Yes, yeah.
Oh my God.
And my youngest son was aware of it. He was very young at the time, and the guy threatened him and told him if he told anybody that he would kill Leah's family.
Wow. So he crept in and then crept out, got away? Is that? Oh.
Yes, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Listeners should know I did not know the specifics of that until now. Okay. Saying you believe that excuse me, you believe that started kind of a downward trend.
Definitely, yeah. We did send her to counseling. But it worked a little bit, but for a while, but it just continued downward. So.
Okay. And then, like you said, she got into drugs, and also, like you said, that started to affect her grades and
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
I guess you tried rehab, and I mean, what did your family, once again, as comfortable as you can be about saying whatever you want to say,
Right.
what lengths did you go to? What kind of help did you try to get for her, and did she try to get any help, on her own? I guess once she got older.
Well, the help that we got for her, we sent her to a psychiatrist for medication, and then also sent her to counseling for several years. We did off and on counseling. We did family counseling and individual counseling for her. Um, I have to say she hated going to the psychiatrist because she would just feel like they would stare at her, and really didn't enjoy going to the counselor that much either. But and then she almost failed her senior year. She was taking an honors class and was failing it, and that was going to keep her from graduating. But then she decided to go to an evening class where she retook her English class and was able to graduate. And then she went on and started college, her first year of college, and then things just continued to go downhill, and she wound up dropping out of college.
Okay.
And then after that point, she was working a job, and things were just getting worse and worse, and we saw to where she needed help, and so we did an intervention at her job. And at that point, we told her that she had the option of going to detox and then getting help through a program. And so it was at that time that she admitted that she had issues and couldn't help herself.
Okay. So, would you say that she kind of fought you along the way to try to get help, or?
At that point where we did the intervention, at first she resisted, but then finally gave in and said, yes, I had this issue.
And how old was she when you finally did this intervention?
She was 18 years old.
Okay. And we know that she was 23 when she disappeared in New Mexico, and she'd only been there 2 weeks. So how did those, maybe let's just say 4 years go, after the intervention and before she moved to New Mexico? I mean, how did that all go?
Yeah, we actually put her in a program which is called Teen Challenge, and she was in there for 18 months. Usually the program is for 12 months, but they felt like that she needed to stay longer, which she did. And then she got out. While she was in there, the latter part, she started beauty school and then graduated from that. And by the time she was getting out, then she looked for a job, and she was able to get a job with Tony and Guy. But she was doing well for a while, but then things just went downhill as far as her job. And I would make appointments with clients and then not show up, or she would leave and go get drugs and not come back to work at all.
Okay.
So they had to let her go.
Right. Right, of course. Was she living at home at this time, or was she living on her own, or did she have a boyfriend? What was going on?
Yeah, she was living at home. She was living at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
That had to be tough. I mean, I know that's being probably very simplistic about it, but I'm sure it was very difficult.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a hard, difficult time for all of us.
Yeah. Okay. When did the idea come up of her moving, like you said, from the Fort Worth area to Albuquerque, New Mexico? Who came up with that idea? Why did it come up? What was the plan?
Yeah. The church that we were going to, there was a music minister and his wife that attended there, and they attended the same church we did. Leah became friends with them, and they loved Leah, and they even took her through a detox, like a 2-week detox, to where they were eating the same thing that she was, trying to clean out her system, and they were just very supportive of her. And they told her anytime she wanted to that she could come and live with them. And they moved to Albuquerque, where he took over as a music minister at another church, and they just always welcomed her. So we discussed, she'd been in jail twice. She had 2 state felonies for drug possession. And while she was in the last time, we suggested to her, and she had the idea too, which she went along with, that she would move to Albuquerque with Ashley and Todd, and just try to make a fresh start from there and get away from people here, and just give her opportunity. And she was all for it.
Okay. Being that she had been in jail a couple of times, were there any complications with her moving to another state?
No, not at all. No.
Okay.
No.
And would you say that this is something that you needed to force upon her, or when this all came up, she was like, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea"?
She was like that. She said it sounded like it was a good idea. She was excited about it.
Okay. And she knew the Warrens well?
Yes, she did. Yes.
Okay.
And they knew all of her issues.
Mm-hmm. And they were ready to help her in any way that they could.
Definitely, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Great. They must be very special people then. Did they have any children themselves?
Yes, they had a couple of children at the time. That they were young, very young. So, but they were willing to make room for Leah to move in.
So you come up with this idea, and how long would you say it was between the idea coming up and then her moving to New Mexico? Roughly around the beginning of May 2006. How long did that all take place?
Yes, probably within just about a 3-week period.
So pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly. Okay, and how long had the Warrens been, just a guess, how long had the Warrens been in New Mexico before she moved out with them?
Just a few months.
Okay, so maybe since the beginning of the year. Okay. Your idea about her moving to New Mexico, what did you envision? What would be the best case scenario for you, her mother, and her moving out there? What were you thinking would happen?
I was very excited about it because I knew they were such a positive influence in her life, and I was just expecting good things to come out of it. I knew there would be some struggles, but I just expected good.
Okay. And at the time that she moved to New Mexico, were drugs? Was this something where she was in the middle of, not doing them, or what was her drug situation when she moved there?
Well, she had actually just gotten out of jail, and within just a few days of her getting out, we bought everything at the store that she would need and moved her out there. Within just days. So we didn't give her opportunity to get adjusted, back at our house.
Right.
We just made the move. So.
Yeah, you didn't want her to get too comfortable at home and then start into possibly her old habits, and then that would have made it very, very difficult to get her to go to Mexico. Sure. How long would you say she was in jail before that stint before she went to New Mexico?
It seems like it was a couple of months, the last one. We let her, she sat in jail and did her time there. So.
Okay. So she didn't leave a boyfriend or anything behind when she did this?
She had a boyfriend, but they had broken up. It'd been several months. They were kind of on and off again. They'd been friends, but then became more serious.
Okay.
But she hadn't been around him probably for about, I'd say, 6 months or more.
Okay. And did she had her own car she could have her own vehicle out there? She wouldn't have to rely on like the Warrens' car or public transportation. She had her own vehicle in Albuquerque?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
She did.
Okay. So let's move to Albuquerque, New Mexico. She moved out there roughly the beginning of May of 2006. She gets out there, was she keeping in contact with you? Was she calling you? Were you talking to her every day? Were you talking to the Warrens? What do you remember about maybe that first week that she was out there?
Right. My husband would talk to the Warrens, but I talked to her every day and sometimes several times a day. She talked to other family members too. I think the day before she disappeared, she actually called her grandmother and talked to her. But we kept in constant contact.
Okay. Would you say that your impression, let's just focus on that first week maybe, would you say that it was seemed to be going well? she was talking to you. She seemed like she wasn't getting into any bad, of her old habits. Maybe the Warrens were, I'm sure, keeping an eye on her. Maybe, like you said, talking to your husband. No
Yes.
red flags at all. Maybe let's just say in that first week.
Well, we knew that there would be a struggle. I mean, there
Mm-hmm.
always is with anybody that's addicted to drugs. But
Mm-hmm.
she seemed pretty positive and upbeat. She was a little bit. She was having to go out there and look for a job, so she was stressed about that. But just she was looking forward to it and thinking good things would happen. Also,
Okay. Good. Good. And did she have any money? Did you give her any money when she went out there, or?
we did. We actually bought up a bunch of stuff at the store that she would need that would keep her, you know, that she would have for several months till she needed anything. But we also did send some cash, and we gave it to the Warrens, and they would. We asked them to give it out to her if it was needed, and that's what they did.
Mm.
And actually, the night that she left and disappeared, they had given her a little bit for her to go with the guy that she was with.
Okay. And we'll surely get to that. So, as far as you could tell, talking to her, no red flags were popping up regarding her. You didn't talk to her and think that she was high or anything like that. The Warrens seemed to think that things were going about as well as you could have hoped. Okay, and to your knowledge, was she keeping maybe in contact with any of these people who were getting her, into bad things in Texas? Any idea? I mean, maybe even to this day, have you ever heard about her keeping in contact with anybody in Texas that maybe was a bad influence?
No, I have not heard of anybody keeping in contact with her.
Okay.
Most of her friends, that had been her friends since high school, still keep in contact with me. And they're wondering where Leah is as well.
Right. Seems to be going well, at least that first week. And looking for a job. And so let's move on maybe to that second week. Did she find a job?
Yes, she did. She found a job at the Flying Star Cafe, and she was supposed to start training the following week, but then she disappeared, so that never took place.
All right, so she disappeared, shortly before she found this job. So this is a restaurant, I guess, cafe, restaurant, so she's going to be a waitress or something like that?
Yes.
Okay,
yes, a waitress.
Did she talk to you about that job? I mean, how did she sound?
She sounded excited about it, and it was in a good area, kind of the area that the type. Well, she's artsy, so it was kind of that area that the people around there would do the same thing and interested in the same things that she was interested in. So she felt like she was fitting in pretty well, and she was just excited over the job.
Okay. Did she talk about maybe any new people that she met, just going there for the interview? Or we have to remember, I mean, she got hired, but she never did actually work there. But did she talk about meeting any new people here, or even overall, once she got to New Mexico, did she ever mention any people that she met out or anything?
She did mention. She did not mention people from the restaurant, but she did mention people that she had met through Todd and Ashley, like at their church. And people that they would have over or that they would go visit. She mentioned them, but any of the other people from the restaurant, no.
Okay. And so once again, we're into this second week. I think that she got this job maybe 6 days, something like that, before she disappeared. And were those the good feelings that you had that first week? Did they continue into that second week after you found out about this job? Did the Warrens ever say anything to you or your husband about anything suspicious or anything?
No, they didn't. They just were caught. They were just kind of aware that she was struggling with the addiction, but did not say that she had used or that they could tell that she had used.
Staying there, was she coming home every night? Was she absent or anything? Once again, anything that, might have seemed off before May 22nd, May 23rd that the Warrens ever told you about?
No, they just said that she was going out and looking for a job, and she usually stayed in with them in the evenings.
Okay. So she has this job. It seems that, things are going just about as well as you could have hoped. Yes, she's
Yes.
struggling, but she has a lot of good people around her.
Yes.
And then we get here to May 22nd, 2006. Now, I know once again that, you've learned a lot of this after the fact, but now that you know at least some of what happened that day, what have you learned about that day, May 22nd, 2006?
I know that she went out on a date with a guy named Johnny Robinson, is what she had told Ashley and Todd. They didn't know where she was going. They'd given her just a little bit of spending money. But other than that, they didn't know anything about the guy at all. And she did not come back. She left a message on their phone, I think it was early morning hours on the 23rd, saying that some things had happened, and that she would call her later.
Okay. Now, on May 22nd, once again, we're going to, the listeners should know that some of these details, I think, have gotten a little skewed over time, and you should know that Sharon and myself have really, tried to talk this out to, figure out as close as we can what happened May 22nd and May 23rd, because we're still a little unsure about all of this. But this car wreck, did this happen on May 22nd? There was a car wreck.
That I am not sure of. It's either late May 22nd, or it could have been early morning on the 23rd.
Okay.
I just don't know.
Okay. And what have you, once again, I know you didn't know at the time, but what have you learned about that, the circumstances and the wreck and who came along and all of that? We'll get back to Johnny Robinson a little down the road here, but as far as the car wreck itself.
All we know is that she was standing on the side of the road next to her car, and this individual there was from the transmission shop, stopped and asked her if she needed help, and she did, and so he towed the car to the shop that he worked at.
Okay, so, and it was considerable damage, and we'll get to that maybe a little later. So she's on the side of the road. Let's say May 22nd or early May 23rd. Guy comes along who just happens to have a garage. At some point, tows the vehicle. Does she go with him? Is that what happened?
Yes.
She went with him. Okay.
Yes.
As happens many times when people are stuck on the side of the road, and I'm guessing then that somebody came and picked her up, but I guess it wasn't the Warrens.
No, it was not.
No, it was not. Okay. To your knowledge, had Leah ever had any driving problems before? Ever wrecked her car before?
No, not that I can remember.
No? Okay. And at this place, I believe it was called MC Transmissions, but I don't believe it's in business anymore, but it is in Albuquerque. So it gets towed there, and then somebody picks her up but doesn't take her home. And do you believe this is the first night in her staying in Albuquerque where she did not end up at the Warrens that night?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be correct.
Okay. Then we get into May 23rd, early morning, so like 12:30 or 1 in the morning, something like that. And she called the Warrens. What did she say?
On her message, she said, "Okay, some things have happened, and I'll call you later." And that was it.
That was that. She didn't mention anything about the wreck. She didn't mention anything about her car. She didn't mention anything about it being towed. It was just a simple, general message like that.
That's right, yeah. Nothing was mentioned about the car wreck.
Okay. All right, so she said that, and that is the last contact that the Warrens had with her.
That's right.
That's right. Okay. That's the last contact that the Warrens had with her, and we'll get in. But there were some other calls made from her phone after that, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. Now, later that day, so the same day, May 23rd, but once the sun comes up, what happened then?
Javier said that Leah showed up in Also, there was a man and a woman that were with her, and actually, the woman was supposed to come up with the money for the repair. I don't know if the car wreck happened while they were around her or what. I just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But he said no one ever showed back up, that she left with them.
Okay, so Leah shows up with these two people, and we suspect, although we don't know for sure, and these are two names that are kind of going about later, but Desiree Money, yes, that's her last name, Money, and we already mentioned Johnny Robinson. It is believed that those two people were with her, but we're really not sure. Javier, has he ever been asked to identify them, anything like that?
I'm not sure if the police asked that or not.
Okay. And what was the reason that Leah showed up that day of May 23rd?
I guess to check on the vehicle.
Okay. And Javier, let me ask you this: have you or did your husband ever talk to Javier one-on-one?
My husband talked to him just by the phone, I believe. He might have stopped by on one of his runs to Albuquerque and talked to him, but he just said that she left with these people, and that the female who he thinks was Desiree said that she was going to pay. So.
Okay. Did the mechanic, I guess, just like anybody, did he tell her, the car was really messed up? Did they make any arrangements? Did Leah tell him to fix it, or is that what you understand?
I'm guessing that no, she did not tell him to fix it, because otherwise I think he would have fixed it and then called and said, hey, the car's ready, But okay. I guess he held on to it for several days because nobody showed up to claim it.
All right. Yeah, and the listeners are going to discover that the damage, and what kind of car was it? Maybe we should establish that. What kind of car was it?
It was a Volkswagen Beetle.
Like the newer style, not like the 1960s style, but like a newer...
The newer Beetle, yes.
Newer Beetle, okay. All right, okay. So that's the car, and it had quite a bit of damage to it. And after that, since that day, at least to your knowledge, my knowledge, at least to the public's knowledge, Leah was never seen again.
Javier had some friends, and those friends told him that they thought that they had seen her at an adult video store. But nothing was ever proven. The police never verified that. But I think that's what he told my husband.
Okay.
And he also said that where it was not a good place.
Okay. Would this have been that day, or was that the next day, or a week later? Do you have any idea on that?
I'm not sure about that. I'm
sure.
just guessing days later.
Okay. So the last official sighting was when she showed up there with two people to find out what was up with her car.
Yes.
Okay. Let's go back to that message that she left for the Warrens. Is there any reason that they didn't pick up the phone when she called the night before? Were they not home? Were they out of town? Did they not hear it ring?
They were at home, but I'm just guessing they could have been asleep, would be my guess.
Okay. And how did they react? I mean, once they heard that message, I guess, on May 23rd, the morning, did they call you? Did they try calling her back? What did they do that morning?
I believe they tried calling her back, but then when they couldn't reach her, they called my husband and said that she did not show back to their house, and they didn't know where she was.
Mm-hmm. And so that was the first warning, I guess, to you and your husband that, something went on.
Yes.
Okay. What did you think?
My husband told them, he tried calling her several times, and I did too, but my husband told them to contact the police and file a missing persons report.
Mm-hmm.
And so they did that, but the police told them it needed to be a family member.
Okay.
So my husband called
the
police and reported it. Yeah.
Okay, so he called from Fort Worth and filed the police report?
Yes. He reported to them. It was taken over the phone, but they said that we actually needed to call back after 72 hours. They said because she was an adult, that we had to wait that long. And they said most adults usually want to be missing.
Well, I would certainly argue with that at least a little bit, but it's probably neither the time nor the place to talk about that. But you know, it's interesting to me. It just seems like police departments are always trying to find reasons not to investigate these cases instead of finding reasons to investigate them.
Right.
But at this point, we have to remind the listeners that at least at this point, when the Warrens called you and your husband, that you didn't know anything about the car being wrecked or anything. You just knew
No,
that
not at that point.
you didn't know, the Warrens didn't know what that message actually meant. It could have meant anything.
That's correct.
Okay. So over the next few days, like you said, you're trying to call Leah. She's not answering her phone. What did you and your husband do maybe over the next few days, let's say May 24th, 25th, 26th?
We tried getting hold of her phone records, and we finally got a copy of them. And my husband, well, both of us started making phone calls, trying to locate Leah.
Mm-hmm. Were you successful in getting her phone records? And what I mean by that, like the numbers that she was calling, the people that were calling her, were you successful?
Yes, we got a copy of those.
Okay. And what did those records tell you?
Just that she had had a ton of calls those last few days, on the days that she disappeared. And the phone call stopped the morning of the 23rd.
Mm-hmm. And was it at that time that you discovered that the call that the Warrens told you about was the last time that her phone was used?
Yes.
Okay. What can you tell the listeners about maybe those last couple phone calls? Do you know who they were made to? What are your suspicions about those couple calls? Maybe I think there are 3 calls.
Yeah. The last phone call, I don't know. I have never been able to locate who it was made to, but the others that were made early that morning from about 3:46 to about 6:24 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
on the 23rd, those were made to Johnny Robinson and Desiree Money.
Okay. Allegedly, the 2 people that were with her when she went to look at her car. It could be that you know, they were talking about picking her up and taking. We don't know. I'm sure the listeners are already knowing that Desiree and Johnny are 2 suspicious characters in this, but we just don't know the content of those calls. And like you said, the last phone call on her phone is not a number that you've ever been able to find out, you know, who it was to.
That's right. I haven't been able to find it.
Okay. And I know that I asked you, since you still have her phone records, to your knowledge, or what did you find out regarding that number? Had it ever been called before that morning?
I did not see it anyplace else on the phone logs.
Okay. So that day that she disappeared, the last phone call that was ever made from her phone is a phone number that never appeared on her phone reports ever before.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So you're looking at this. She's not picking up. Did you and your husband eventually decide to go out to New Mexico?
Yes, my husband did.
Okay. And what did he do once he got out there? What did he tell you? Of course, you weren't there. What did he tell you that you were doing? Where was he riding around? What was he doing?
Yeah. He was riding around. He was stopping at bars and strip clubs, tattoo parlors, any place he thought that Leah might have been, or the type of place that she would go.
Mm-hmm.
He would stop and show a picture. He had flyers that he was passing out, and just going to all different types of places, truck stops. He went to homeless shelters, just all over.
Mm-hmm. Did he, of course, once again, at this point, though, we have to remember it's not that she's just missing, but her car is missing, too. So at that point, he doesn't even know to go over to this transmission place. That's still, you know, something that happens down the road. Is that correct?
That's right. That's correct.
Okay. How long is he out there that first time?
I believe he was out there for about a week or week and a half.
And I'm sure he talked to the Warrens. I'm sure they helped.
Yes,
Any?
I think he stayed with the Warrens
He
while he
did.
was out there looking for her. Yes.
Okay. Any leads? Any news? Maybe did he go to like where this job that she was going to, this place where she was going to be employed? Did anything pop up at any leads at all? Clues pop up in those 7 to 10 days?
Nothing popped up from the cafe restaurant that she was going to work at.
Mm-hmm.
He did some of the truck stops. He ran into a few people that said that they had spotted Leah, but the police said that that nothing could be proven at all.
Okay. So unreliable sightings, which are very common, in missing persons.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
But really no substantial leads. Nobody for sure saying that they saw her.
Not anybody that you could depend on, no.
Okay. Did he talk to the police while he was out there?
Oh yes, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
he did.
Did they, at some point, like you had said already, they maybe didn't take it as seriously as they should. They said wait 72 hours. Do you believe it at some point your husband finally convinced them this was a little more than just some adult needed some time off for a couple days?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, he did.
Okay. You already had the phone records, and you, of course, could show those to the police, but did they ever ping the phone to find out, its last location in Albuquerque, if it was in Albuquerque? Did they ever do that?
And as far as I know, no. They haven't given us a whole lot of information as to what they have done. Other than saying that person's unreliable, but, saying checking places, they said there's no evidence of her having been there.
Okay. So they haven't. So even to this day, we're doing this interview on July 26th, 2018. You would say that the police have not told you a ton about her disappearance. Is that your opinion?
No, they don't know a whole lot about it. No.
Okay. All right. So your husband, and probably a lot of the listeners know that this was on the very popular missing persons TV show, Disappeared. One of the aspects that they really concentrated on, once again, I've not been able to view it because I haven't been able to find it online, but they really concentrated all these trips that your husband took to Albuquerque. Maybe you can give your side of this. How many trips did he make? How were you feeling about it? Were you worried about him going out there? Give your side of this.
Definitely. As far as Albuquerque, he made 11 trips out there. He also made a trip to Las Vegas. He went out to Bakersfield, California. He also went down to Phoenix area too, looking because we'd read in the newspaper that there were prostitution rings that were connected from Albuquerque into those areas. Right. And so he went down there and did the same thing that he did in Albuquerque, passed out flyers and tried talking to different people in bars and clubs and the same area, the bad areas of the town, but came up with nothing.
Nothing at all. At any time when he was going into Albuquerque, and once again, as I remember, he was going into some dangerous places, any threats on his life or, poking around? And I'm sure there's probably even some instances probably he didn't tell you about because he didn't want you to worry, but anything that you know about that he ran into that, he was maybe poking around where he wasn't wanted?
Yes, yeah. In fact, one of the leads that he was following was at a truck stop, and he was just hanging around there. And one of the, one of the women that was there said if he didn't get out that they were going to kill him. And I can remember him calling me one night, and he had taken furniture and stacked it up against the door because he was afraid that they were going to try to break in and get to him. But he was stirring up trouble, yes. Okay. And so one of the places he went to was like even talking to homeless people under bridges and stuff.
So as Leah's father, I guess being an amateur sleuth, he did about everything that he could do, you would say.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, he took he took a lot of risks to find out what happened to his daughter, his baby girl.
Yeah. Yeah, he would even go sometimes and put on disguises trying to, make himself look different so that they wouldn't suspect that he was out there again looking.
Okay. At this point, 11 times, would you say how long of a time was that spread out over?
Probably about 3 years, 2 to 3 years.
Okay. And I'm sure he had a job, so he was probably taking off for work, and anytime he had vacation time, he was going out there. And
That's right. Yeah. Any sick leave he had, any time, vacation, and then even sometimes when he didn't have vacation, he would still go. Any holidays, just any time he would take off, he would go out there.
mm-hmm. If you can,
I'm not.
Please continue, please.
I was going to say the majority of the trips were done at first, and then as the years progressed, they would get fewer because he didn't have the leads to follow. So.
Okay. Let's go back to the car for a second, then we'll start talking about Johnny Robinson and Desiree and some of these other things. But was your husband out in Albuquerque when you finally discovered what happened to the car, or was he back in Fort Worth?
He was back in Fort Worth.
Okay. And how did that all come about that this mechanic, once again, her car was wrecked? It seems that Leah had wrecked the car. Maybe somebody else did, but she was one with her car when it got towed. How did this mechanic even end up contacting you?
He actually had left voicemail on Leah's phone, and we were able to gain access to her voicemail. And from that, my husband called and asked him what was going on or what had happened. And he told her that she had been involved in a wreck and that he had towed the car. And then that she had never showed up, that he had had it for 17 days and was just needing somebody to come and get it.
Okay, once again, how many days was it between her car being wrecked and then him finally contacting you, this Javier who ran this shop?
That I'm not sure of. I know it was over this 17-day limit.
Okay, so, and what would you say he was doing there? You said that he never did work on the car.
No, he did not. I think he was waiting to hear from Leah that he needed to proceed with the repairs, but he never heard back. Nobody ever showed up. Nobody called.
Okay, and I'm guessing when you got that call or you heard the call about her car and everything that was the shop, I'm guessing at the time you were thinking, well, this is a pretty big lead in her disappearance.
Yeah. That's what we thought.
Okay. And so he didn't fix the car, and he wanted to know if somebody was ever going to go pick it up. Did you pick it up?
Yes, we had Todd had it towed to their house.
Mm-hmm. The Warrens had it towed to their house.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the police went out there and looked at the car, and then released it. And they said we thought that that they would be able to dust it for prints or find out something, but I'm not sure if they dusted or not. But I know that they released it because they said that she had dropped off the car and had walked away, so that it had not been involved in a crime.
We already know that it was wrecked on the outside, but what was the inside, the interior of the car? What condition was it in?
My husband said it was in very bad shape. It was extremely dirty. It had oil and grease and dirt. He said there was blood on the side door, and also there was blood on the mats, and also the base of the car. Underneath the mats that there was blood. But he said it looked like that she'd been hauling people in it. So it was just in really bad shape.
And would you say that was the shape of the car when she moved to Mexico?
Oh, no, not at all. It was very clean.
Okay. I guess since the car got towed to the Warrens, and being that she had been living with them, they got to see the car. What did they have to say about the condition of the interior of the car? Was that something that they noticed while she was living in there, or was that something that it got messed up, within a day or within a couple of days? What was their opinion?
Just that they hadn't seen it in that condition, only since she had been gone. with it messed up.
Okay. And you said there was blood in there. Did you personally get to see the interior of the car? Was there any pictures taken of the interior car?
No, it was not.
No, and you never got to see it personally?
Yeah, I never did. My husband saw it when he flew out there after Todd had it towed to his house. He flew out there and looked at it.
Mm-hmm. When you say blood, should we take it to mean that it looked like something violent happened into it, violent happened in the car, or blood in some other context?
Yeah, I am not sure. I know on the side door it looked like something like somebody had shot up, used drugs or something, and there was a small amount of splattering, and Detective Lopez said that also. But as far as the floorboards and the mats, I'm unsure. My husband just said there was blood all over it. I think just his frustration and not being able to find his daughter, and just it just escalated, and he was angry that they weren't doing anything about it. So.
Right. And just to go over this again, the police never did take any samples of that blood. They never did any forensics on either the inside or the outside of the car at all.
I do not believe they did.
You ended up getting the car fixed, and how much did the bill come to get the car fixed?
It was $7,400.
77.
Yeah, it's almost $7,500, but $7,400 and a few cents.
Okay, that it's even $7,000. I know a lot of people are going to say, "Wow,
yeah,
that must have been one heck of a wreck." And you've showed me the bill, and it had mostly to do with the undercarriage of the car, as if I used to be in the car business. Earlier in my life, I used to work on cars and things. You almost get the idea that like she ran up over a curb or over one of those parking dividers, like at full speed or something. The whole underside of the vehicle was torn up.
Yeah, I believe Javier had said it was either a curb or a median that she had run up on.
Okay.
But it damaged, I think, the radiator and the axle, and did quite a bit of damage.
And probably, I'm guessing, wherever he picked her up is the location where she probably got in this wreck. Do you have an idea of where she got picked up?
No, I don't. But one thing I did fail to mention also about what was in the car, my husband said that there was a pair of men's underwear in the car also.
Okay. Anything else unusual in the car? Anything that was missing from the car?
No.
All right, so we got a car that got wrecked, seemingly, we're thinking, on May 22nd. $7,500 worth. Considerable damage. In fact, I'm sure that given the value of that car at the time, that might have probably been easily over half the value of the vehicle, I'm guessing.
Yes.
But you guys got it fixed. And so considerable damage. I think the front axles need to be replaced, suspension, a lot of parts, a lot of work somebody had to do to get that running again. So you all found out this from the mechanic. Could Javier, once he got to meet, I guess, your husband, Leah's father, could he offer up any information? Is that when you then found out about Leah showing up there with these two other people?
Yes.
Let's talk about those people. When did you first hear the name Johnny Robinson?
That would be from the Warrens. They said that's who Leah had gone out with.
So she just, had he ever been over to the house? Had they ever seen him?
No.
Did they know
He'd
how?
never been there. I don't even think they saw him. I just know Leah had met him. She took her vehicle and met him somewhere.
So she admitted who she was going to see, and this would have been this guy that she allegedly was meeting on May 22nd. I guess, for a date. How did do you even know to this day how he and Leah met?
I don't know how they met exactly, but I'm guessing that they met at the restaurant. I don't know if he worked there. I don't know if his cousin, Desiree, worked there. I'm just unsure about that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Leah freely admitted to the Warrens, I'm going to meet this guy, and they never met him before. They'd never heard his name before at all. Has he been, so after you found out about him, I mean, once again, when did you find out about him? Did the Warrens tell you about him when she turned up missing, or is that a name you heard later?
That was the name they gave us when she turned up missing. It said Leah told them that she was going out with him.
Okay. And was it your husband who tracked him down? Did the police track him down? I know you had, of course, those phone numbers. I mean, is that how you tracked him down, by calling him? Or?
Yes. Yes. I just started calling the phone numbers that were listed on the log, and asked them if they knew anybody named Johnny Robinson. And so I went through all of them, and then I came across one that, which was Desiree Monet's, and she had said that she was his cousin.
Okay.
And she said she had seen Leah, but she didn't know anything else about her.
All right. Well, we'll talk about Desiree now. Is that the first time you ever heard of Desiree, when you called that number and she picked up?
Yes.
I mean, did she freely give you her name? I mean, she had to be wondering why a woman from Fort Worth, Texas, was calling her.
Yes, she gave me her name.
Okay.
And she had told me that she was his cousin.
And she admitted to seeing Leah. How did she say that she met her, I should say?
Just that she had been introduced to her, and that I guess that she had seen her with Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
But did not know. She said she did not know where she was.
Okay. Would you say that she was helpful? Would you say that she was friendly when you talked to her? And is that the only time you've ever talked to her?
No, I called her back after that. She said that she would get the message to Johnny Robinson to give us a call,
mm-hmm.
and then she never did. And so I called her back, and it was at that time that she became angry with me and told me to stop calling.
Okay.
But Johnny did eventually call through somebody else that I made a phone call to. It was a connection to a friend that he hung out with.
Okay, is that this friend that you tracked down? That was somebody you also found from the phone list, the phone records?
It was somebody else on the phone list.
Okay.
And I asked, when I called, I asked if they knew Johnny Robinson or how to get a hold of him. And this woman said that her son was friends with Johnny. And I said, I'm trying to get him to call us back so that we can find out what happened to our daughter.
Okay. Do you happen to remember how long this was after Leah disappeared?
Seems like about a week and a half to 2 weeks. It was right after we got the phone records. We immediately started calling.
Okay. When your husband went out there that first time, did the name Johnny Robinson ever pop up in any of the questioning that he ever did anywhere?
No.
No. Okay. What did Johnny have to say when he did call you, and what did he say happened? Of course, we know that Leah told the Warrens that she was going to meet him. And what does he say?
He said, yes, that he had been with her. He said, in fact, they had been together a couple of days, and they had been at a motel, but then he woke up one morning and she was gone, and he didn't know anything else about her.
And are you
and
taking...
That was him giving that information to my husband.
Okay. And are you taking for granted that means maybe the morning of May 23rd? You know that.
Yes, that's what I would suspect.
Okay. Did he ever say anything about going with her to the transmission shop?
No, he did not.
No, he never.
And neither did his cousin. Neither did Desiree either.
No. And once again, I have to ask you: do you know at any time has Javier, the guy who works at the transmission shop, been ever showed pictures of Johnny or Desiree to identify them as the people who were with Leah that day? Do you know?
Yeah. My husband did not have pictures of Johnny or Desiree. As to the Albuquerque police, I don't know if they went and questioned about them, but um, they didn't tell us everything that they did.
They don't have to if they don't want to.
Yeah.
All right, so Johnny might have, just to go over this, to put this, condense this a little bit, Leah's going to get this job at this cafe. We are to believe that she met Johnny through someone who worked at the cafe, or maybe he personally worked at the cafe. And then they decided, Leah and Johnny, to get together. Maybe they were starting some relationship or something like that. But Johnny's not a very good guy, is he?
No, he is not.
Okay. Does he have a criminal record?
Yes, he does.
Anything? I mean, is it involving any violence, drugs? I mean, have you seen his criminal record? How would you portray it?
I would say violent.
Okay. So,
And I think one of them had to do with discharging a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Any specifics, I don't know. But his cousin also, Desiree, has a record also.
She does, and I've seen her picture online, and she, I think, currently is in jail as well. So Leah is not in New Mexico for too long, but we can't ignore the fact that very quickly she seems to have met up with a couple people who are bad news.
Yes.
Who are bad news. And Johnny's story is that he saw her that morning and then left, but he never mentioned anything about the transmission shop, but we don't know if it was him. Are Johnny and Desiree African American?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And were the two, the man and the woman that were with Leah at the transmission shop, are they of the same race?
Yes.
Same race, same African American? Okay. Maybe it was them. Maybe it was two other people. To this day, 12 years later, we still don't know. Desiree, not that helpful, was belligerent when, the second time. Did she ever mention that, she saw Leah in person? And if so, and where?
Yes, she mentioned that she had seen her, but she didn't mention where she had seen her. Just that she had met her.
Okay. So let's talk about this guy. I have him written in my notes is AJ. When did his name come up? I believe it came up in one of the trips that your husband made to Albuquerque or Las Vegas. What can you tell the listeners about him?
Yes, my husband came across his name when he was in Albuquerque. There was a lady who was on the streets, and her name was Amy, and she said that Leah was with AJ. AJ is Donald Sears. I think he's the AJ stands for either Almighty Joe or Armani Joe because of the way he dresses.
Okay. Could you spell his last name just so the listeners know what his last name is?
Yes. Sears.
All right, just like the stores. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Donald Sears, AJ. Did your husband ever track him down, talk to him? Is there any way that you were ever able to connect Leah with him?
No. My husband tried tracking him down, but could not locate him. My husband had heard that he was a drug dealer and a pimp. He also had a record, too.
All right. So, once again, somebody else who, unsavory character with a record who name pops up when your husband was, looking around. You said this girl's name was Amy. Did she ever meet Leah?
She said that she had seen Leah, yes. In fact, I think she was the one that had said that Leah was one of AJ's favorites.
Okay.
But I know Detective Lopez looked for him, and she said that she could never find any proof that Leah had been with AJ.
At all. And did I read that you did track AJ down, but he was in jail? Did your husband get to talk to him, or no?
Yes, my husband went and spoke with him, and he denied ever having seen Leah or being with Leah. he said he knew people that could probably find her. If he was able to get him some money, that he could probably locate Leah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so we don't know what to make of this guy at all. Did your husband believe that, or did he think that AJ was just telling a story?
He thought AJ was just telling a story and was just wanting money to get out of jail.
Mm.
But he said he still felt like he knew where she was, but I'm not so sure.
In all these trips, and once again, you said there were about 11 of them, maybe including maybe this trip to Las Vegas.
Yes.
Did he ever feel that he ever made any headway in trying to figure out what happened to Leah?
At the very first, he thought he was making headway, but then everything just stopped, and the people would stop talking to him, so he wasn't able to get any more information.
What was he? If you can say, what was he saying to you at the time? I mean, I know you were both. I mean, just crazed. Yeah. I mean, I know, depressed. Yeah. Is not even probably even close to the word that what you were feeling and everything. Was this I should say, being that he was the one that was going out here, would you portray it as people were withholding information? Was he saying that, or do you think it was more he just wasn't? I mean, the people who he was running into were probably just telling the truth and really didn't know anything.
Yeah, I don't believe a lot of them did. He was getting frustrated. He said, I know I can find her, but he was just driven to find her. And he said, if I go out there more, I can probably get more information, but he was never able to get any more information.
Did he ever try to track down Desiree or Johnny to talk to them in person and find out where they were?
He could not. We could never figure out where they lived, but he did try. Yes.
Nobody would ever give him that information. No. Maybe somebody at the cafe, if Leah had met through there.
No one would give information there either.
No. All right. Do Desiree or AJ, like AJ, Johnny, do they have any histories of sex trafficking? Anything in their record?
We'd heard that Desiree had a escort service, but couldn't ever prove that.
Yeah. I've looked at her record. Of course, prostitution is on there, but I didn't see anything with sex trafficking, anything like that. Now, there was an alleged sighting. Your husband at one time ran into this woman. Is she a nun? Some religious position? Sister Paula. Who is she?
Sister Paula. Actually, what happened there was we were in where Leah had been before, which was Teen Challenge. My sister had contacted Teen Challenge and said that Leah was missing, and they connected us to a young woman that was out there that was connected to Teen Challenge. Her name was Patricia, and she and I were emailing back and forth. And she said that there was a woman that was that was a minister there, or ministered through Teen Challenge, that had seen Leah on the streets. She was given a picture of Leah and also a picture of AJ, and she said that she saw Leah and AJ, and that she was able to lead Leah in the sinner's prayer. And she said Leah did admit to being Leah, and she said Leah was with AJ and also 4 other black men. And after ministering to her, she asked Leah, "Are you being held against your will?" And whom she says was Leah, said no. But I don't believe she's telling the truth there. I tried calling Sister Paula many, many, many times and left messages for her to call me back, and she would never call me back. The only time she was interested in talking to anybody was when she knew that she was going to be that she could be on a television program.
Great. Well, that's encouraging. Wow. Yeah. Okay. But we do have to admit, though, that your husband kind of believed her.
Yes.
He did.
He did.
But
I did not.
Yeah, and I have to admit, we've already talked about this before in a prior conversation, that I'm more inclined to
Yeah.
believe you.
Yeah.
In fact, as my listeners know, that most eyewitness sightings, I don't believe. 99% of them I think are false. So,
Yeah.
and it just doesn't seem conceivable also that these guys who are around Leah would just let this woman walk up to her and talk to her, and it's just
Exactly. And what a question to ask if she's with AJ, a supposed pimp, whoever it was, a supposed pimp, and 4 other black men. Is she going to say, "Yeah, I'm being held against my will"? I mean, it's crazy.
yeah, it is. It absolutely is. We've talked about the phone calls. We know this last phone call. I did send some information to you. You had given me the phone number. I believe I asked you if these people meant anything to you. You told me no, right?
No, no, that's correct. None
Right.
of them meant anything to me.
Okay. So, and we know that phone numbers get passed on, from
Right.
person to person. It could be that whoever has the number now did not have that number in 2006. We just don't know, but that number is not one that name you've ever heard of, and I'm guessing you don't remember your husband saying anything
Right.
about that either. Okay.
No, he did not know anything.
Okay. Now, something that you just actually sent to me today that I thought was very helpful, gave me some good insight into who Leah was, is you have her journal
Yes.
from her time. I'm sure you have a journal even when she was in Fort Worth, but specifically her time in New Mexico for those 2 weeks. And we have to remind the listeners she was only in New Mexico for 2 weeks before she disappeared. Maybe as much as you feel comfortable talking about it, what can you say about this journal? How many entries? What was she talking about?
She made an entry on the 9th of May, also the 10th of May, and the third entry is on the 17th of May, just a few days before she disappeared. And in the first entry, she talked about how she was excited to be there and she was looking for change, and that she knew it would be a struggle, but she just thought that good things were in store for her, and that God was over it all, and knew her and knew her issues, and just that things were going to work out for good in that area. On the 10th, she just spoke about the difficulty she was having because she was getting over a relationship still. The relationship had ended months before, but she was still very hurt by it. But yet she was still hopeful in that one also. And then the third entry was on the 17th, and she talked about what a great day it was. And she said, "I can finally relax. I got a job yesterday. I start work at the Flying Star next week, and I give God all the thanks for blessing me with it."
Mm-hmm.
She said he's the one and only, and she just thanks him for making it happen, and that he had good things in store for her, that God was aware of everything that she was going through.
Would you say that those entries are accurate representation of your daughter, of her personality? And
Very definitely, yes. Yeah, she had
mm-hmm.
had a love for God. She had a love for people too,
Mm-hmm.
but she just had the addiction struggle.
Yeah, that she had at that point when she disappeared, she'd been fighting that for 8 years, maybe something like that.
Yes.
8
Yes.
years. Okay. Are you bothered by the fact that there was like a week between journal entries? Would you say that was something that was unusual, or would you say that was pretty common, being that it went from like the 10th to the 17th, and then there was no entry after that?
I would say that was pretty common. She enjoyed writing, but she didn't write every day. But she's always brought God into the picture, and she knows that God will work things out in her life, that she's, just dealing with it and having to deal with it, and just turning it over to God, her issues, like we all do.
Yeah. Yes, and I appreciate you sending the pictures of those pages to me, and that I got to read them, and I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Did the police ever in depth, to your knowledge, speak to Johnny, AJ, and Desiree, to your knowledge?
I have been told by Detective Lopez that yes, she spoke to all of them.
Okay.
But that she said Johnny, I guess, had been with her, but there was no evidence that that she disappeared while she was with him. And with Sears, she said never was proven that Leah was ever with him. There's no evidence.
Okay. And once again, there's no proof that those are the two that were with her at the transmission shop. Either of any of those people ever been given lie detector tests, and even maybe just to expand this a little bit, are there any other suspects to your knowledge in her disappearance if we're to think that something, concerning foul play happened?
Right.
And,
no, as far as I know, no lie detectors were given to them. I know with AJ, I think they questioned him a couple of times, but nothing came of that. They said they couldn't find anything. And there is nobody else that we know of that she was connected to.
All right. So the way it works out is, she went to the shop to find out, what was going on with her car with two people. And then after that, just nothing. And once again, we know that on that day, her phone was never used again.
Correct.
Okay. If this, story is not difficult enough, because once again, I know that a lot of the listeners are familiar with the Disappeared episode, in which, once again, Leah's father played a prominent role.
Yes.
Leah's father is not with us anymore, is he?
No, he is not. He passed away on August 5th, 2013. He was in a motorcycle accident and broke his neck and died on impact.
I know this is, I don't know if I can even, accurately ask this question, but, what this has been like for you. I mean, if, you lose your daughter to a disappearance, I, of course, always hold out hope that she is out there somewhere. I try to do that in every case. And then
Right.
Leah's father, who, worked so hard, trying to figure out what happened to his daughter, and then he passes away in 2013 in a motorcycle accident. And it's you and I guess your two sons who are still fighting.
Still fighting, yes. Just keeping my ears open for clues, keeping in contact with the detectives to see if she has anything new. Like the other day, on July 4th, I got a phone call that some remains had been found in that same area, that the other 11 bodies had been found. And so they were having to do tests. But she called back the next day and said that it was found out that they were just remains from an old architectural dig.
Okay. Maybe if you could, Sharon, maybe expound on that a little bit. Sharon, Leah has in some circles been connected possibly a serial killer. Maybe.
Yes. Yeah.
Why don't you expound on that a little bit if the listeners don't know what you're talking about?
Yeah, I believe back in 2009, I think was a year, there was a bone that was discovered by a woman that was walking her dog, and it happened to be a bone that belonged to a woman. And so the police were called, and they came out and started digging up the desert area, the mesa, which is outside of Albuquerque, and 11 women's bodies were located. And so we had to go through the time of each body being identified and told that there was a possibility that Leah was there, which it turned out to be that she was not. I never felt in my heart like she was, but my husband was out there even while the digging was going on.
He was there?
Yes, part of the time he was, yes, when it first happened.
Yeah, and many of those women eventually were identified.
Yes.
And I'm sure this is still would you say that this is a crime that is still unsolved? They don't know who killed these women? Is that accurate?
No, that is correct.
Okay. And I know that they've even like used satellite photos to kind of track when they could look at tire tracks that were being seen in the area from satellite to document when these bodies were being dropped off in that area. And I know that there was even something in the news recently about maybe some bones being found. Even I'm going to say within the last couple months at least. But in your opinion, and maybe since he's not here to speak for himself, did you and your husband believe that Leah's disappearance was connected to that or not?
My husband felt that it could be connected since she had disappeared out in Albuquerque, but I did not feel like there was a connection.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I go by gut feeling,
Yeah.
what I'm feeling, which I think women are that way. That we have a lot of intuition.
You do.
And
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. And there was even one case where there was a lady that was out in South Carolina that had contacted my husband on Facebook, and she said that she knew where Leah was. And my gut feeling on that was, no, she's not telling the truth. But my husband made a trip out there, and it turned out that she was trying to scam us and get some money. So, you know, when my gut was telling me something different, it turned out to be that way.
So many scammers out there.
Yes,
I would say at least half the guests who are unfound have a scamming story. Luckily, most of them have not fallen for it, thankfully.
Yeah, yeah.
So you do not believe that I should ask, you know, is there anything that has ever popped up on your radar? Maybe the detective has ever told you that the Desiree or Johnny or AJ could be connected to any of these women who were found out there, deceased?
No, she's never said anything that would indicate that.
Okay. All right. So we're just it may just be a coincidence that Leah disappeared in the same city where these murders, and we should say that these women who were found there, they were prostitutes. They had drug problems themselves.
Yes, yes.
What has this been like for your two sons? How have they handled this? Just the disappearance of their sister. How has it affected them?
They miss her extremely. They miss her, but it's different, I guess, for a brother than it would be for a parent. They keep praying for her and believing that she will show up one day.
Mm-hmm.
Daily we pray for her, protection over her. But they have to get on with their lives. So
yeah, that's true.
You do what you have to do. Yeah.
That's true, and I know that some of my guests who have multiple children, they've talked about making sure that you concentrate so much on trying to find out what happened to one of your children that you don't forget about the children who are still here.
Definitely, yeah.
That's been a topic in the past on Unfound as well.
Yeah, and they're all precious. I'm sure to all the parents, each child.
Yes. Is there anywhere that obviously we've mentioned the Disappeared episode? Of course, it's a very popular program, and I know that they run those the reruns on ID quite often. I don't know when Leah's episode was on recently, but I'm sure it's been on probably within the last few months. But I haven't seen it for a while. But is there anywhere else where my listeners can find out more about Leah, about the case, even about her, father who is not with us anymore? Do you have a Facebook page, etc.?
Yeah, there's a Facebook page set up. My husband had one, and it tells what happened. He was involved in an accident. It doesn't go into the detail. But, I mean, you can go to several different websites that will describe Leah, give a description of what happened.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have a specific Facebook page for Leah or not?
No, my husband was the one that was running that.
Okay. All right.
But anybody can look at mine if they have any questions they want to ask or information they want to get. They can look at my Facebook page and send me a message.
Okay. And are you Sharon Peebles on Facebook? I know sometimes people don't have their real name. Are you just sharing?
I'm Sharon Peebles, and my maiden name was McDowell.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any last words before we conclude this interview, Sharon?
Just that I believe that God's going to locate Leah, and that there is a timing in everything. Almost like if you read about Joseph in the Bible, he was in prison, and there was a time that God had training and teaching for him, and he released him from prison, and he did great things. And I believe God has great things in store for my daughter too.
Okay. Faces, once again, if you don't know, once again, another big topic on Unfound. A lot of people, pray a lot about their children who have disappeared and their parents and their siblings. And
Yes.
I know that many of my listeners are very devout religiously as well. So I'm sure they'll be sending thoughts and prayers to you as well. And I'm hoping also, at least what I like to say in the material world, that they can help you with, maybe some clues, of course, information from Albuquerque. Maybe somebody pops up and knows a little bit more about Johnny and Desiree than, everybody's been able to find out so far, if they are involved. So I'll be hoping for that as well. I
will hope for that too.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I'm hoping that the listeners, can help you out. Sometimes these things take longer than we'd like, but the thing about the internet is once you do an interview and put the program out there, it never goes away. So this is going to be out there for eternity, and I think that you never know when something good can happen. So
that's right.
Yeah,
I'm expecting good to come of it.
I'm hoping so as well, of course. Sharon,
I really again appreciate the opportunity that you've given me.
You're welcome, Sharon. I have said to my listeners and to my parents, I'm up here in Pennsylvania, that I wish disappearances never happened. I wish they were not part of the earth. But if they're going to be, then I want to be involved in trying to solve them and talking to people like yourself, because I believe that you deserve to be able to tell these stories in your own words.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And that was my interview with Sharon Peebles, mother of Leah Peebles. I thank her for joining me and all of you on this episode. As I alluded to at the beginning of this program, something happened to Leah years before she disappeared. All of you now know it was the rape she endured when she was in 9th grade. Like Sharon said, after that, Leah began a downward spiral that no person or program, and not even her faith, could save her from. And I don't believe it's a stretch to say that if that rape doesn't happen, Leah doesn't go missing in New Mexico in 2006. I should say that I think more than ever that with the Me Too movement and advances in psychiatry, we are starting to understand the long-term effects of both sexual harassment and sexual assault. It is not something that just goes away. It sticks around in women's lives, sometimes forever, causing them to think things and do things they would have never considered otherwise, putting themselves in harm's way. As for what happened to Leah, Desiree and Johnny certainly make good suspects, but someone needs to put their pictures in front of Javier's eyes to see if those two were with Leah the day she went to his garage. However, I have to admit that there is something about Javier just happening upon Leah's car on the side of the road that seems strange to me. As you heard, the damage to her car was $7,500, and the parts damaged included ones that would make the car impossible to drive. So wherever the crash occurred is where the car would have been stuck. But Javier claims Leah was on the side of the road, not a place where I think that kind of damage on Leah's Volkswagen would occur. Not to mention, with damage like that, surely a cop would have driven by and stopped upon seeing Leah and her wrecked car. But that didn't happen, seemingly. Moreover, usually the person driving a wrecked car tells the tow guy what happened. But to my knowledge, Javier never specifically told Leah's father or her mother what Leah said about the crash, despite her riding in the tow truck with him. Very odd. Are we sure Javier's story regarding him coming into possession of Leah's car is true? I'll leave the rest of the theorizing up to you. And that's the program. If you found it informative, please go to the app that you use to listen to Unfound and give this podcast a nice review. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've been listening to Unfound.